My name is Captain Daniel Mercer, Logistics Officer, Petufik Space Base, formerly known as Thule Air Base. I am 38 years old, and I have spent 5 seasons stationed above the Arctic Circle. This is my introduction and opening line to a day I will never forget. Word count will be provided at the end of this entry. We were not supposed to be here in the way that mattered. Petufik is a place defined by schedules, by windows for resupply, and a rhythm of radios and generators. The base sits on Cape Athol by Wolstenholme Fjord on Greenland's northwest coast and is operated by the United States under a Danish agreement. It is part of a missile warning and space surveillance network. The phased array radar scans the horizon. That morning, the sun was lean and stubborn over the fjord. Summers here behave strangely. The sun can skate across the sky for weeks. We are used to extremes, equipment that freezes, barrels that fracture, men who joke about waking to find their tents moved overnight, but we are not used to things that do not belong to any manual. My shift began at EO 600. I had been awake for an hour, running checks on manifests for the pallet drop scheduled for noon, diesel, rotor parts, fresh produce, oxygen bottles, and a crate of scientific sensors bound for a satellite detachment. Manifests are tidy lists that make you feel safe because they are finite. That is a lie you tell yourself until it is proven wrong. The call came over net control. Logistics. You have a call from Site J, Priority Alpha. The voice was Sutherland. He spoke with the clipped tone you learn in Polar Service, short, urgent, and trying not to let the rest of the base here panic. There is something on the radar, he said. Low speed, low altitude return. Not aircraft. Not a bird. I need you to confirm gear to move a team out. I felt a stupid hope. Maybe a research balloon, a migratory blip, or satellite debris, and then the qualifier, it is not picking up on optical. Cameras show nothing. Site J runs on data and redundancy. Engineers there insist the math should tell the whole story. The radar told them something. The cameras contradicted it. I tallied equipment, snowcats, a short-range drone, a 2-man polar kit, and a squad of techs who could handle a field repair. I prepared a pallet list and stamped it before the tremor of fear rose. We moved as a unit because that saves you. The team boarded a supply truck, 2 mechanics, Ramirez the EOD specialist who laughed too easily, and me. We tracked across the gravel runway that looks like a line drawn into nowhere. On the way, Sutherland updated us. The contact was roughly 3 kilometers east of Site J, moving at irregular intervals, sometimes pausing as if listening, sometimes lurching like a child learning to walk. The radar gave coordinates and an elevation low enough to make the team joke about a seal on stilts. Someone mentioned geomagnetic interference. Nothing to alarm about, they said. Just the magnetometer acting up. What we found was not a seal and not debris and not any animal I had seen in training manuals. The snow around the coordinates had been ordinary, granular and wind-sanded until we came upon a ring of disturbed ice like a throat carved into the land. The ring was about 3 meters across. The middle was a depression that smelled faintly of diesel and something mineral and older than our presence. There were tracks around the ring, imperfect, as though made by boots that had forgotten how to step. Ramirez crouched and checked the grooves like he could read a confession in their depth. No prints inside, he said. It is like whatever was here left from the center. Sutherland had brought higher command into the net. Naval liaisons and our satellite watch were listening. When I told them we were adding a perimeter, someone replied with a terse yes, and the warning that contamination protocols needed to be followed. The base runs drills for chemical exposure and ordnance. Muscle memory made a cordon routine. We set up markers and red tape with the same calm you use to set a curtain. By the pale noon, Site J reported new anomalies. The radar registered tiny reflections moving away from the ring, small blips the system flagged as unidentified microcontacts. In human terms, something was leaving the ring and sliding into the empty country beyond. Cameras still showed static. The math and the eyes refused to agree. I remember thinking how strange it was that instruments designed to watch for missiles could be slow to answer a question about something small and close. It was the beginning of a day where definitions would fracture and names would move out of reach. The isolation here sharpened small things into emergencies. A missing pallet can become a matter of engineering. If the weather turns, a damaged antenna can cut off an entire hemisphere of data. The base maintains an asphalt runway more than 3 kilometers long and is kept operational year-round to receive scheduled flights and emergency medevacs, which helps when the ice clamps down. As we worked that morning, I kept thinking about how Petufik's instruments are meant to translate the unknowable into numbers, tracks into vectors, heat into signatures, echoes into identifications. There was a bureaucratic faith in that translation, comfort in maps and call signs. That faith was useful until the data refused to be whole. Something in the field was negotiating our models, carving its absence into the snow and teaching us, moment by moment, that not all anomalies want to be mapped. By 1300 hours, the sky over Patufic had shifted into that strange half-light we get even at noon, like the sun is reconsidering whether it wants to bother with us at all. The temperature had dropped fast, and the wind coming off the fjord scraped grit against our goggles. Every sound was sharper than it should have been. The hum of the generator, the rustle of the red tape, the tiny pops of ice contracting. Sutherland's voice came through again, rough with interference. "Mercer, command wants a live feed of the site." "Can you get the drone up?" I gave the signal to the mechanics. The small reconnaissance drone, an RQ-11 derivative we'd modified for polar weather, lifted off and stabilized against the wind. Its feet flickered, then cleared. The snowfield appeared on our screen in perfect resolution, the ring, our tracks, the horizon. And then, nothing. Nothing isn't absence, it's defiance. Every 30 seconds, the image would stutter, a faint blur smearing across the lens before recentering. We thought it was lens frost until Ramirez wiped the optical dome clean and the smear returned, this time moving, angling upward, as if climbing through the camera's depth. The feed cut to static. Then a tone, low and rhythmic, began coming through the speaker, a pulse exactly every 1.8 seconds. It sounded mechanical but not man-made. Sutherland's voice cracked. "Kill the feed! Pull it back!" The drone started returning automatically. Halfway back, its GPS froze and altitude data spiked. 4 meters, then 40, then 400, impossible jumps. When it finally landed, its casing was warm, not from the motor, from something else. Ramirez unscrewed the lower panel and stepped back fast. There was ice inside. Not frost, ice. A thick, packed layer wedged between the circuit boards, steaming as if it were trying to breathe. He looked at me. "This thing's been out 7 minutes. We bagged it and called it in. Within an hour, Command ordered the site sealed. They wanted us back to base with samples. No argument there. On the way back, the wind shifted south. Visibility dropped to 30 meters. The convoy lights cut halos through blowing grit. I rode in the second truck with Ramirez and the tech named Galar, a new recruit who'd only been north 2 months. He kept asking questions no one wanted to answer. What if it's a sinkhole? Or methane ignition? You know, pressure change from permafrost? Ramirez shrugged. Then it'll make the paperwork easier. I stayed quiet, watching the instruments jitter. The magnetic compass was a useless toy up here, but the digital heading indicator should have stayed stable. Instead, it began rotating, slow and deliberate, as if the truck were circling. The GPS, however, insisted we were moving in a straight line. At first, we thought the sensor had failed. Then the other trucks reported the same. "Mercer," came the call from the lead vehicle. "Confirm your heading. Ours just spun 180. Still on bearing 265, I said. Visual confirms it." "Visual doesn't mean anything in this light," Ramirez muttered. He was right. The world outside the windshield had become a white wall. The only proof of movement was the vibration of the tires on packed snow. 5 minutes later, the base beacon appeared ahead, the faint pulse of the radar dome, blinking slow through the fog. We made it back to the compound perimeter and shut down the engines. Inside the main hangar, heat slammed into us like a wall. Frost fell from our gear in chunks. Command had already set up a decontamination tent. They moved fast, faster than usual. 2 medical officers in full protective suits waited by the airlock. They swabbed the drone, the boots, the sample containers. Each time a test strip reacted, they marked the reading not as positive or negative, but inconclusive. It means the science hasn't caught up yet. When we handed over the ice core scraped from the ring, the lab chief, Dr. Keating, didn't say a word. She just stared at it as if it were something she recognized and had hoped never to see again. Within an hour, they cleared most personnel from the hangar. Only essential staff remained. Me, Ramirez, Gellar, Sutherland, and Keating's team of 3 researchers. At 15:30, the loudspeaker crackled. All non-essential movement suspended. Radar stations 3 through 5 will remain offline until further notice. That was rare. Patufic doesn't shut down radar without cause. The network forms part of NORAD's early warning system. Even maintenance gets logged months ahead. When they went offline, it meant something larger was happening. Something we weren't supposed to know. Keating approached me while removing her gloves. "You logged the coordinates?" "Yes. Erase them." I stared. "Ma'am," she lowered her voice, "delete them from the drive." "Don't archive, don't back up. Just erase. Consider it an order." Her tone wasn't angry. It was tired. I did as told. By late afternoon, the sample room lights dimmed as the base switched to emergency power conservation. Outside, wind speeds hit 50 knots. The storm that wasn't forecasted had arrived. We gathered in the control room, 12 people in all, lit by amber monitors. The air smelled of ozone and chemical heat packs. Sutherland played the recorded tone from the drone feed again. It echoed through the speakers like a slow heartbeat. "Could be interference from geomagnetic flux," one of the engineers said. No, Keating replied. Flux doesn't stay rhythmic, and it doesn't change key. Everyone turned. Change key? I asked. She rewound the recording. At first, it was the same steady pulse. Then, subtle, almost imperceptible, the tone shifted higher, then lower, like breath under strain. Sutherland muttered, "So we're listening to a living thing." Keating didn't argue. She just turned off the speaker. Outside, the storm pressed against the metal like a living weight. At 1900, the first alarm sounded proximity sensor breach at the eastern gate. Ramirez and I went with the security detail. The snow outside had buried half the floodlights, throwing everything into distorted shadows. Through the blizzard, we could make out the tall chain-link perimeter, the gate swinging open just enough for wind to slip through. "Who left it like that?" the sergeant asked. No one answered. He aimed his flashlight down the fence line. The beam cut across drifts, twisted wire, and then, there, near the gate's edge prints, bare footprints, human-shaped, sinking deep into ice. They led inward. The sergeant raised his rifle. "No one moves alone. Mercer, on me." We followed the prints for maybe 20 meters before they vanished. The snow there was smooth again, untouched. Then the radio hissed in my ear. "Mercer, Sutherland here. We just got new radar returns." "From where?" "From inside the base." I looked around. The wind swallowed my breath. There was nothing, no shape, no movement, but every hair on my neck lifted. Sutherland's voice broke again, barely audible over static. "Same coordinates as the ring, same pattern. It followed you back." Ramirez cursed under his breath. We turned to retreat, but the gate behind us was no longer open. The metal had frozen solid in seconds, rimed with ice thick as glass. The sergeant pounded it once, twice. The sound rang dull, muffled, like hitting something hollow underneath. That was when the power in the compound went out. Everything went silent. The storm outside still roared, but inside the walls of Patufic, it felt like the world had stopped breathing. For a few seconds after the power failed, no one moved. The only light came from our headlamps, white cones trembling against the dark. The wind pressed against the hangar doors with a sound like 1,000 hands dragging across metal. Somewhere in the distance, an alarm half started, then died. "Backup generator should have kicked in," Ramirez muttered, tapping his comm unit. Static hissed back at him. We knew what the checklist said. If the main grid failed, 2 diesel backups would start within 30 seconds. If that didn't happen, it meant either both lines froze at once or someone had manually disconnected them. The sergeant radioed the command building again. Nothing. No carrier signal. No chatter. Patufic's net had gone completely silent. "Back inside," he ordered. We forced the gate open with a crowbar, the hinges snapping off like glass. The moment we crossed the threshold, the snowfield behind us darkened. So dark, it seemed to swallow the spill of our headlamps. I didn't look long. Some instincts aren't superstition. They're survival written into your bones. Inside the base compound, we moved through corridors painted in that military green-gray that always feels like a bruise. Without the usual hum of power, every sound was naked. The crunch of boots, the breath caught in balaclavas, the way the metal walls pinged softly as they cooled. At the junction near the operations wing, I saw something that made me stop. A trail of moisture ran along the floor, thin, uneven, leading toward the generator room. It wasn't water. It shimmered, like oil on snow. Ramirez leaned closer and scraped it with his glove. "Frozen," he said. "But it's 30 degrees in here." The sergeant motioned for silence and raised his rifle. We followed the trail. It led to a heavy steel door marked "Authorized Personnel Only." The lock was disengaged. He swung the door open. The smell hit first. Ozone, metal, and something faintly organic, like the inside of a freezer that's held meat too long. The emergency floodlight in the corner blinked once before dying completely. The generator room was a cathedral of shadows, pipes coiling along the ceiling, 2 massive diesel units hunched in silence. Their control panels were still warm to the touch. The moisture trail ended beneath the far generator, where frost had gathered in a ring, identical to the one we'd found in the field, 3 meters across, edges perfect, center sunk and glistening. Ramirez whispered, "Jesus Christ. It copied itself." The sergeant keyed his radio again. "Still dead. We're pulling out." We regroup in the control center. As we turned to leave, a low vibration rippled through the floor. The loose tools on the workbench rattled. It wasn't seismic, it was rhythmic. The same 1.8-second pulse from the drone feed, except now we could feel it. It came from below. Sutherland's voice suddenly crackled through my headset, faint and fractured. "Mercer, do you copy?" Go ahead, I answered, relief cutting through the fear. We're in the generator bay. Backup systems offline. Something's... Don't move, he said. We're seeing thermal anomalies under your position. Under? 2 meters down. Moving toward you. Then the line cut. The frost ring began to glow faintly blue. Steam rose from the center, coiling upward like breath. The air pressure changed. I could feel my eardrums flex. Out! The sergeant barked. We backed toward the door, weapons raised. Ramirez covered the rear, his flashlight fixed on the ring. The glow strengthened. Something inside the ice began to shift, pressing against it from beneath. The metal floor groaned. Then it cracked. The sound was like a whip sharp splitting the air. Frost dust blew across the room. For a heartbeat, I saw it, a dark shape, humanoid only in outline, unfolding from the ice like it had been waiting there all along. No face, no edges, just movement, slow and deliberate, against physics itself. We slammed the door shut and bolted it. The sergeant shouted into the radio again, his voice breaking. Command, respond! We have a breach in the generator bay. No answer. The corridor lights flickered once, then returned, but not with the clean white of fluorescent bulbs. It was dimmer, tinted faint blue, like the glow from the frost ring had bled into the wiring. Power's back, Ramirez said. His voice was flat. Then why does it look like that? Geller whispered. The base's emergency siren finally activated, echoing through the corridors. A pre-recorded voice followed. Containment Protocol 7. Secure all bulkheads. Await command verification. No one had ever heard that phrase before. Patuthik had protocols 1 through 6, fire, radiation, fuel spill, biological hazard, intrusion, and mass casualty. 7 wasn't in the manual. We moved through the base, sealing each section behind us. The metal doors clanged shut, isolating hallways with loud pneumatic locks. At each junction, I keyed in the override code, my gloves slipping on the keypad. The air was getting colder, fast. Frost began to creep up the walls. At the control room, we found Sutherland and Keating waiting, pale and wide-eyed. Screens flickered in front of them, radar feeds looping static, camera views filled with distortion. One frame caught my eye, the generator bay from the overhead camera. The frost ring was gone. So was the generator. Keating turned toward me slowly. It's moving to solid matter. That's not possible, I said. Neither is ice forming in a running drone. It showed the storage wing, 20 meters west. The lights there pulsed in time with the tone. The same pattern, 1.8 seconds. Whatever it is, she said, it's looking for energy. The base power grid readings began to spike, megawatts drawn, circuits tripping, breakers blowing across sectors. The whole installation was being drained alive. Ramirez leaned against the console, whispering half to himself, You ever wonder what radar looks like to whatever's on the other end? Keating stared at him. Excuse me? He smiled weakly. We've been scanning this ice for decades. Maybe it finally scanned us back. The floor trembled again. Harder. The lights dimmed, then returned. On one of the live feeds, a section of corridor warped, the metal walls bending inward like soft clay. Cut the main, Sutherland ordered. Kill all power except the secure network. We obeyed. The hum of the base died. The silence was absolute. And then came the knocking. Knock. The metal flexed with each one. Ramirez raised his rifle toward the door. Keating whispered, It's copying us. What? The pulse, she said. The rhythm. It's matching the heartbeats of anyone close. We all went still. The knocking stopped. Then the speaker on the control console flickered to life. A voice came through, distorted, distant. My own voice. Mercer, do you copy? It said, calm, precise, just like I sounded that morning. We found something. It's moving. I stared at the radio, frozen. My real headset was still off, hanging around my neck. The playback wasn't possible. The system doesn't record internal channels. Keating turned off the monitor. It's learning language, she said quietly, and it started with you. No one spoke after that. We just listened to the wind clawing at the metal and the faint hum beneath our feet, steady, patient, alive. The next sound we heard wasn't the knocking. It was breathing, not ours, not from anyone in the room. It came through the speakers, slow even, amplified just enough that we could hear the inhale, the pause, the faint tremor of the exhale. Keating muted the audio. The waveform still pulsed on the monitor. It's not background noise, she said. It's localized, coming from the same source as the mimic broadcast. The mimic. That was what she called the voice that had spoken as me. Sutherland leaned over her shoulder. So it's in the communication net. Keating nodded once. Or it is the communication net now. The room fell into the kind of silence that makes you aware of your pulse. Ramirez had his hand resting on his rifle, not to use it, just to feel something solid. The temperature kept dropping. Frost began to feather across the glass displays, thin as breath. Outside the sealed bulkhead, something heavy shifted in the corridor. We all heard it. Metal on metal. A slow drag, as if something enormous and unhurried was moving against the wall. Motion sensors? Sutherland asked. Offline, Keating said. I shut them down with the main grid. Turn them back on. She hesitated. If I bring the sensors up, I'll have to reactivate the internal network. That's exactly what it's using. Ramirez exhaled. We're blind either way. The floor shuddered again. The lights flickered blue. Sutherland made the decision. Do it. Give us eyes. Keating's fingers flew over the keyboard. The network came alive, icons blinking one after another across the screen. Infrared overlays, pressure readings, motion detectors. At first, everything was static. Then one red marker appeared. Section D, just outside the operations wing. Another marker joined it, then another, forming a slow line that crawled toward us. It wasn't walking, it was spreading. What the hell are we looking at? Ramirez asked. Keating zoomed in. The readings weren't thermal, they were negative thermal, each mark registered below absolute zero. Oh, that's not possible, she whispered. The line reached the bulkhead door. Every monitor in the room began to glitch. Lines of static scrolled across them like text, rearranging themselves faster than human typing. Then words began to form. Here! The words overlapped until they bled into white noise. Sutherland slammed the emergency disconnect. The screens went black. For a moment we could hear only our breathing again. Then, from somewhere deeper in the base, a new sound rose, metal groaning, hydraulic locks unlatching. Keating spun toward the console. It's opening the sealed doors! How? It's in the system. It knows the command codes. We had minutes, maybe less. The containment bulkhead outside the control room was one of the last barriers left. We couldn't run for the exit. The storm outside would kill us in minutes. Our only option was the sub-level tunnel network, old maintenance corridors carved into the rock decades ago, before the radar station expanded. I knew the route. Logistics officers always do. This way, I said, and motioned toward the auxiliary lift. We moved fast, gathering only what we could carry. Thermal packs, radios, a flare gun. The elevator was dead, but the manual crank still worked. Ramirez spun it while I pried open the doors. The tunnel air hit us in a wave, damp, cold, almost metallic in taste. Yeah. Our headlamps illuminated concrete walls lined with cables and frost. The tunnel sloped downward, curving beneath the main compound. Where does it end? Geller asked behind me. Old storage depot, half a kilometer east. Leads to the fjord edge, I said. He nodded, not because it helped, but because he needed something human to hold on to. We started down. Every few meters, water dripped from the ceiling, freezing mid-fall into small spears of ice. The wind from the surface whistled faintly through cracks in the ductwork. Halfway through the descent, the lights above flickered once and died. Darkness took everything. Headlamps, I said quietly. One by one, white cones of light reappeared. Then, faintly, I heard a new sound. Not the wind. Not machinery. A voice. Mercer. It was mine again. From somewhere below us, repeating my name in the same cadence I used over radio checks. Mercer! Status update! Ramirez swore under his breath. It's here! The echo crawled up the tunnel. It didn't sound like it came from one mouth. It sounded like it came from the walls themselves, vibrating through metal and stone. I keyed my dead radio out of habit. This is Captain Mercer. Identify yourself. Silence. Then the same voice answered, calm, familiar. We found something. It's moving. Exactly the same words from earlier, but this time the last syllable dragged, stretched until it turned into a wet scrape, like air forcing through ice. Keating pressed against the wall, whispering to herself. Language acquisition, mimicry, sound propagation. No, that's not enough. It's resonating through the structure. The floor under us trembled, dust falling in slow spirals from the ceiling. Move! Sutherland ordered. We ran. The tunnel sloped steeper now, the air colder. My breath fogged and hung like smoke. Behind us, the voice followed, closer each time, now copying others. Move, it said in Sutherland's tone. Mercer, in mine. Don't move, in Keating's. Please, in Gellar's. Even though Geller hadn't said a word. By the time we reached the depot door, our lights flickered. The heavy blast door stood slightly ajar, frost feathering its edges. Inside, the temperature was far below freezing. Ramirez forced it open. The room beyond looked like an ice cave masquerading as a warehouse crates buried under frost, tarps stiff with cold. In the center, a long fissure split the floor, wide enough to see darkness breathing beneath. The same ring formation lined its edge, blue-lit and perfect. Keating's voice cracked. It's spreading under the base. Sutherland pointed toward the far exit hatch. We keep moving. To the fjord. But before we could take another step, the intercom in the ceiling clicked on. A faint hum, then that voice again, layered now, harmonized, as if a dozen versions of me were speaking at once. Do not leave, it said. The words were slow, careful, each consonant deliberate. Stay! The air vibrated with it. The frost on the floor rippled like something alive underneath. Ramirez raised his rifle and fired. The shot cracked through the chamber, echoing into the fissure. The sound went down and did not come back. Then, impossibly, the bullet casing froze midair and shattered before hitting the ground. Keating backed away, whispering, "It's not matter, as we understand it." The hum rose again, deep, resonant, almost musical. Our headlamps dimmed as if light itself were being drawn away. I looked toward the fissure. Shapes were rising within it, silhouettes like reflections of us, blurred and flickering, not solid, not vapor, but something in between. Each shape took a step forward, mirroring ours. "Move!" Sutherland shouted. We ran toward the far hatch, boots skidding on frost. The hum became deafening, a low pressure that made my teeth ache. When we burst through the exit and sealed the door behind us, the noise cut off instantly, leaving only our ragged breathing and the hollow echo of the wind. Outside, the sky had turned an unnatural color, green and violet waves streaking through the storm. The aurora, they called it. But I had seen auroras before. They don't move like that. They don't pulse to a rhythm that matches a heartbeat. We stood there on the fjord's edge, the wind clawing at our faces, the base lights flickering behind us like a dying city. No one spoke. Then the intercom towers across Patufik lit up one by one, glowing faint blue through the blizzard. And from every speaker, all at once, my voice came through again, steady, calm, and utterly wrong. "Captain Daniel Mercer reporting. All systems restored." The blizzard howled so hard it flattened sound. My voice barely carried when I said, "No one answer that transmission. W." The radio towers across Patufik kept flickering like dying candles, each one repeating that same calm report. "Captain Daniel Mercer reporting. All systems restored." The tone was too steady, mechanical yet practiced, as if something inside the base had learned the exact shape of human speech but not the breath behind it. Keating leaned close, shouting over the wind. "It's using the grid as a speaker. Every line, every circuit. If it controls the power, it controls the base." Sutherland's jaw was locked tight. He stared back toward the complex gray shapes half swallowed by ice fog. "Then we cut it off from everything. We isolate it." Ramirez barked a bitter laugh. "From out here? With what? A wrench and good intentions?" He wasn't wrong. We had no power, no comms, and no visibility. The only light came from the aurora dancing above us, unnatural, pulsing slow, matching that same 1.8-second rhythm. It felt less like weather and more like something breathing above the world. We sheltered behind an old storage container near the fjord's edge, blocking the wind long enough to plan. The ink was half frozen, the paper stiff. She pointed at a black mark along the coastline. "There's an auxiliary substation here," she said. "Built during the Cold War. It's not connected to the main grid anymore. It runs on its own generator for field calibration. If we can reach it, we can power a shortwave link to Thule Command." Ramirez shook his head. "That's 3 kilometers through open ground. In this storm." Sutherland looked at me. "Mercer, your logistics. Can we make it?" I did the math automatically. Wind speed, visibility, terrain. It wasn't good, but staying meant waiting for something that could move through metal and ice like water. "We can," I said. But we go light. We packed essentials, 2 headlamps, 1 flare gun, the emergency locator beacon, and Keating's insulated tablet, the only thing still holding a local copy of the base systems. Then we started walking east along the fjord, the storm grinding around us. For the first half kilometer, the only sound was the wind. Then, faintly behind it, came something else. A thin, broken melody threading through the static notes that shouldn't have existed in that air. It came from the bass, carried by the storm, soft and deliberate, a piano or something pretending to be one. Keating froze mid-step, it's transmitting audio through the radar frequency. Ramirez stared back through the haze. "You mean it's playing music on the defense network?" She nodded. Or trying to. The melody faltered, then reformed, this time matching a pattern of Morse pulses. Keating's eyes widened as she translated aloud. "Stay! Still!" No one moved. The wind tore at us, snow needling into our faces, but for a moment all of us were statues. The world seemed to hold its breath. Then the music stopped. Sutherland whispered, "Move." We pushed forward, slower now, every instinct screaming that something out there was listening. The further we went, the stranger the landscape became. Snowdrifts froze in mid-collapse, like the storm itself had been paused. The air had weight, the pressure thick enough to taste, and beneath it all, always, the pulse. At last, through the whiteout, we saw a shape. The substation, a squat concrete bunker half buried under ice, its antenna mast jutting into the sky like a broken spear. We reached the steel door and forced it open with a crowbar. Inside, the air was colder still, but at least it was still air. Keating went straight for the control panel. her fingers shaking as she cleared frost from the switches. The generator was manual start. She cranked the lever, coughed once, then the lights flickered on, dim orange, fragile but real. The radio console buzzed to life. She tuned to the emergency frequency. Thule command, this is Pitufik station personnel. Emergency transmission. Do you copy? Static. Then, faintly, copy, Pitufik. Identify caller. This is Dr. Karen Keating. We have a containment breach. Repeat, unknown entity compromised all systems. Do not. The line cut. Then, her own voice came back through the speaker. This is Dr. Karen Keating. We have a containment breach. Same tone, same phrasing, same breath between words. Ramirez stared. It's on the line with us. Keating switched frequencies. Every channel echoed back the same, her own voice looping from nowhere. Then the signal changed. My voice again. Calm. Captain Daniel Mercer reporting. Coordinates confirmed. What coordinates? Sutherland demanded. Keating looked at the display. A GPS trace blinked on the screen, a moving dot west of us. It's broadcasting our exact location back to Pitufik, she said. Why? Her answer was barely a whisper. To bring itself home. We shut down the transmitter instantly, but the damage was done. The storm outside roared louder, like the sky itself was collapsing. The aurora above twisted into a spiral, centered directly over the base. Ramirez loaded a flare into the gun. If that thing wants home, it can have it. I'm not dying in the cold. He fired straight into the sky. The red arc burned bright, vanishing into the storm, then froze midair. The light hung there, motionless, a red vein trapped inside glass. Keating stepped back. It's bending electromagnetic fields. It's rewriting physics. The generator sputtered. Lights dimmed. On the far wall, frost patterns began forming words, letters blooming from the ice like veins under skin. Hello! Again! We all stared. Then another line formed beneath it. Bring it! Back! Sutherland's voice cracked. Bring what back? The ice pulsed once, then split, a fine crack running across the letters. Beneath it, something darker shimmered, a faint glow, blue and liquid. It wasn't melting, it was pushing through. Keating slammed the generator switch off. The lights died. The glow vanished. Silence returned, broken only by our breathing. Ramirez whispered, We're not getting out of Greenland alive, are we? No one answered. We stayed like that for minutes, frozen, waiting for a new sound. It came, eventually, from outside. Not wind this time, but engines, a convoy. We looked through the frost-coated window and saw headlights approaching across the ice military transports, moving steady through the storm. Sutherland exhaled. Command sent recovery. Thank God. But the pattern of the lights was wrong. Not 3 vehicles, 2. And they weren't approaching. They were circling. Moving in slow, perfect loops, tires cutting identical tracks in the snow, over and over. Keating whispered, They're not driving those trucks. The lead vehicle stopped. Its door opened. A figure stepped out, tall, faceless under the stormlight, but familiar in movement. I didn't realize why until it tilted its head exactly the way I did when listening on comms. And then it raised a hand in greeting. Ramirez's voice was shaking. Tell me that's not! It spoke, through the wind, through the radio, through every piece of metal around us. Captain Daniel Mercer reporting. All systems restored. I reached for the crowbar, but my arm felt heavy, sluggish, as if the air itself resisted. Outside, the 2 vehicles stopped circling. Their headlights turned to face the substation in perfect unison. The lights blinked once, then twice, 1.8 seconds apart, and behind them, farther back across the ice, the aurora's spiral began to descend. At first, it looked like the aurora was collapsing in on itself, green ribbons tightening into a column of light that reached from the clouds to the ground. But it wasn't falling, it was reaching down. The color deepened, bleeding blue, then white, until the whole sky above Pitufik looked like an eye opening slowly over the ice. The air around the substation began to hum, not sound pressure. My molars vibrated, my vision doubled. Keating dropped to her knees, clutching her ears. It's ionizing the atmosphere, she shouted, her voice raw. The entire electromagnetic field, it's folding it. Sutherland dragged her back toward the wall. Move away from the window. Their headlights weren't beams anymore. They'd become pillars, vertical lines of light climbing upward and joining the column above. For a moment, it looked almost beautiful. Then the lights began pulsing again, 1.8 seconds apart, perfectly synchronized with the aurora's rhythm. The figure that had stepped from the lead truck started walking toward us, its outline blurred in the snow. One moment it was a man, the next a smear of brightness, and then nothing but a ripple in the air, like heat distortion in the dead cold. Keating whispered, It's using electromagnetic frequency to project itself. That's why it mimics, why it can be seen at all. Ramirez raised his rifle. Yeah, well, let's see if projection bleeds. He fired 3 rounds through the glass. The bullets disappeared midair. No shatter, no spark, just gone, erased between one breath and the next. The recoil threw him backward, but there was no impact on the other side. Then the glass mended itself. The crack sealed from the center outward, smooth and soundless. That's it, Ramirez said. I'm done. We need to move, now. Sutherland pointed toward the rear maintenance tunnel. That leads back toward the radar ridge. If the vehicles came from that direction, there's a path. Move. We descended a short ladder into the tunnel. The hum grew fainter, but never stopped. It was inside our skulls now, deeper than sound. Halfway through the corridor, the light behind us shifted from blue to white. A shadow stretched along the wall, lengthening, dividing. It wasn't one shape anymore. It was 4. Don't turn around, Sutherland said quietly. We didn't. The tunnel curved downward, ending at a graded platform overlooking a frozen channel that fed into the fjord. The ice below was fractured, glowing faintly from underneath. Not reflection, radiation, Keating pointed. Thermal activity, it's under the ice. I crouched beside the vent grate. The heat coming up wasn't warm. It was wrong, like the air itself had polarity, like standing next to a magnet that pulled not your body but your thoughts. Then we heard it again. My voice. Coming from below the ice this time. Mercer, report. We found something. The phrase looped, soft and patient, each repetition slightly clearer than the last. Ramirez snapped. He drew the flare gun, fired straight into the fissure. The red flare streaked downward, burning against the frost, and then curved sideways, vanishing into the ice as though the world had bent around it. We stared. The glow reappeared 30 feet away, traveling beneath the ice in a perfect circle before fading. Sutherland muttered, "It's mapping us." Keating's tablet suddenly lit up, even though it wasn't connected to any network. Lines of code scrolled fast, too fast for human input. She tried to shut it down. The power button did nothing. On screen, a message began to form letter by letter. I see you, then another. Home, home. She threw the tablet into the fissure. It vanished like the flare. We need to reach the ridge, she said. If we can destroy the transmitter array, we might break its network. Sutherland hesitated. We'd be cutting off all contact with command. Command isn't listening, I said. It's listening through command. No one argued after that. We followed the drainage channel east, climbing until we emerged into the open again. The storm had changed. The wind no longer howled. It pulsed. The sky was an inverted sea of light, the aurora now forming concentric rings around a single column still anchored over Patufic Base. From this distance, the installation didn't look like a place anymore. It looked like circuitry, a web of light connecting every building, every antenna, each glowing in the same blue-white hue. The thing wasn't inside the base. The base had become the thing. Sutherland stared. We're too late. Keating pressed her gloved hand to her forehead, shaking. It's using the infrastructure to replicate. That's why it needed the coordinates. It wanted the network density, the power relays, the radar. It's rewriting the architecture into a host. I watched as one of the towers collapsed inward, not falling but folding, each metal beam sliding into itself like tinfoil. The light that poured from it was blinding. Ramirez turned toward us, eyes wide. It's building something new. The ground shuddered beneath us. The snow cracked. From the fissures, light began leaking up in thin, deliberate veins. Every 1.8 seconds they pulsed in time. I don't remember falling, but I hit the ice hard enough to knock the air out of me. For a second, I saw nothing but white and light and movement. When my vision cleared, Ramirez was gone. His footprints ended 2 meters away, the last one half melted, half formed. Keating screamed his name. The sound echoed across the fjord, then came back. Not as an echo, but as an imitation. Ramirez, the voice called, her voice. Perfect, down to the break, we ran. The ridge loomed ahead, the radar array silhouetted against the aurora's heart. The structure was massive, 4 dishes angled toward the sky, each humming faintly. We climbed the metal staircase, our gloves slipping on frost. The wind up there didn't feel like wind anymore. It moved in rhythm, same pulse as before, bending our breath into mist that disappeared upward. At the top, Keating pulled the control cover open and began yanking fuses. We overload the transmitters, she said. Blow the circuits. Sutherland braced her as the tower swayed. I grabbed the last relay, twisted it until the copper sparked. The hum spiked in pitch, a scream just below hearing. Then everything went white. For a moment there was no sound, no cold, no time. Just light pressing against the inside of my skull, endless and still. When I could see again, the tower was gone. The ridge beneath us was black glass. Keating lay beside me, motionless but breathing. Sutherland stood near the edge, staring down at the fjord. The aurora above was gone. The storm, gone. Patufic Base was dark again. No lights, no sound, nothing but the sea ice cracking softly below. Did we do it? Keating asked, her voice hoarse. Sutherland didn't answer. He pointed toward the horizon. There, where the fjord met the open sea, the ice glowed faint blue, not fading, spreading. I realized then that we hadn't stopped it. We'd freed it. The pulse came again. 1.8 seconds, slow, patient, and this time it was coming from beneath the ocean. The sea below us began to move, not with waves, not with tide, just movement. The ice shifted in one continuous sheet, silent, flexing like something immense was turning over beneath it. Every 1.8 seconds, a faint pulse rippled across the surface, distorting the reflection of the dying aurora until the colors twisted into spirals. We stood on the ridge, the remains of the radar array smoldering behind us. Keating clutched her knees, breathing through her scarf, her eyes glassed with exhaustion. "We dumped 30 megawatts straight into the transmission spine," she said. "It should have fried every circuit. Maybe it didn't need circuits anymore," I said. Sutherland paced near the edge, his silhouette sharp against the dark horizon. "We get back to base. We regroup. We don't know how many are still alive." He didn't say if any were. The climb down was slow. The wind had gone slack, unnatural. It wasn't absence, it was suspension, as if the air were waiting. The snow no longer fell. Flakes hung mid-air, trembling in place, glinting faintly blue. Ramirez was gone. I didn't let myself think about him. We reached the lower slope by dawn, if it could be called dawn. The sun was a pale coin buried under haze, offering no warmth. Every building at Patufik sat dark, covered in frost so thick the shapes had merged together. Only the main radar dome still showed color, a dull glow leaking from its seams like breath through skin. Keating stopped. "If it's spreading from the fjord, the array wasn't the origin. It's channeling power through the seabed." Sutherland frowned. "Then why keep the base running?" "Because it needs resonance," she said softly. "Every system, every frequency, every human voice, it's using all of it to stabilize whatever it's becoming." I didn't want to hear the word becoming. We entered the main compound through the maintenance bay, forcing the frozen doors open with a crowbar. Inside smelled of oil and cold metal, but there was another scent too, ozone and something sweet, faint and rotting. The kind of smell you notice just before lightning strikes. Every light flickered at the edge of vision. Every surface hummed. In the command hall, the screens were alive again. No images, just waves of static rolling upward in rhythm. On the floor, beneath the main console, Frost had formed words. "Welcome back!" Sutherland cursed and smashed the console with his rifle butt. The words remained, unmoved. Keating moved closer, studying them. It doesn't understand malice. It's not language the way we think of it. It's replication, like a virus learning to imitate the host's heartbeat. The PA system clicked on. Static filled the room, then a voice. "Sutherland's. All personnel return to duty stations." "Repeat. All personnel return." He lunged for the speaker, yanking the wire out, but his voice kept looping even after the cable hung dead. "All personnel! Stop!" he whispered. The loop stopped instantly. Keating froze. "It's responding to command tone. It learned the hierarchy." I looked at the frost on the console, the soft flicker of blue under the ice. "Then it's not copying us anymore," I said. "It's absorbing us." Sutherland turned toward me, but his face changed before I could read it. The light in the room shifted, every shadow lengthening toward him. His outline blurred, stuttering like bad footage. Keating screamed, "Get away from him!" But it was too late. The light inside the room bent toward him and then folded him out of existence. No sound, no heat, just a vacuum pop like air rushing to fill where something had been. The rifle he'd been holding dropped to the floor, steaming with frost. For a long time, none of us moved. The hum had grown louder, closer to a heartbeat now. Keating's hands trembled, her eyes fixed on where Sutherland had stood. "He didn't die," she said. "It integrated him." "Don't," I said. "Don't call it that." Her voice cracked. "You don't understand. We're not fighting a creature. We're fighting an equation." The lights along the corridor flickered, each one dimming in a sequence like a wave moving toward us. The sound followed. Soft, wet footsteps, perfectly paced, 1.8 seconds apart. Keating grabbed my sleeve. "We have to get underground again. The tunnels lead to the old ice runway." We ran, boots slipping on frost, past walls that breathed faintly as if air moved behind them. The deeper we went, the colder it became. Our breath came out in solid sheets of vapor. When we reached the tunnel intersection, a faint orange glow flickered ahead. Firelight. Ramirez stood there. At least it looked like him. His parka was scorched, his goggles cracked, but his stance was the same, weight on one hip, rifle dangling loose. He smiled when he saw us. Too calmly. "You came back." Yuting froze. "Ramirez?" He nodded once. "Ooh. Ooh." We made contact. Something about his voice was wrong. The cadence, it was too measured, too exact. What contact? I asked. He tilted his head, the same way the figure outside the substation had. It wanted to learn us. It didn't understand separation. Now it does. Keating took a step back. You're not Ramirez. He smiled wider. Neither are you. The frost along the tunnel walls began to move, sliding upward, forming thin filaments that quivered like nerves. They reached toward him, connecting to the cracks in his goggles, the seams of his coat. For a moment, he glowed from within, his shape filled with the same faint blue-white light we'd seen under the ice. Then he spoke again, softly, like a secret. Captain Mercer reporting. All systems restored. I fired. Reflex, not reason. The shot echoed through the tunnel, deafening. The body fell, cracked open on the ice floor, hollow, filled with frozen light instead of blood. Keating knelt beside it, shaking. It's building vessels, she whispered. It's trying to make itself human. The hum deepened until the metal around us began to resonate. From somewhere far above, a siren wailed. The old base evacuation alarm, long dead until now. We ran again. The tunnel opened onto the edge of the ice runway, the one that faced the open fjord. The sea was awake now, glowing like molten glass beneath the fractured crust. The entire horizon pulsed. Keating fell to her knees. It's not leaving. It's expanding. The pulse, it's a replication pattern. The same geometry we use for radar triangulation. It's using the Earth as its map. I could barely hear her over the wind or what had become of it. The air now carried whispers, layers of human voices merging into one. My own among them. The sound came from everywhere, from the ice, the wind, the metal beneath my feet, from inside my own chest. We found something. The fjord cracked open, a perfect circle forming in the ice, just like before. The water below wasn't black, it glowed white-blue, so bright I had to shield my eyes. And rising from that light came the shape again, tall, faceless, made of distortion and breath. But this time, all moving, in sync. Keating stood, whispering like a prayer. It's calling them home. I didn't know who them meant anymore. The hum climbed higher, into pain, into pressure, until thought itself felt liquid. The last thing I remember was Keating grabbing my arm and shouting into the wind, "If it learns everything we are, there'll be no difference left!" Then the light swallowed the runway whole. When I woke, the world was quiet. Not silent quiet, the kind that comes after a storm, when even the air doesn't quite trust itself to move again. I was lying on my back, half buried in snow, the sky above washed gray, no aurora, no pulse. The horizon stretched flat and empty. The ridge where Patufik Base had stood was gone, just a sheet of pale ice reaching toward the sea. For a moment, I thought I'd gone deaf. Then the faint scrape of snow shifted beside me. Keating! She was alive, sitting a few meters away, staring at the horizon. Her goggles were cracked, her face raw from windburn, but her eyes were steady, too steady. Keating! My voice came out rough. What happened? She didn't turn. It stopped. I pushed myself up, every joint protesting. The snow around us was fused, glass smooth. It shimmered faintly, as if lit from below. The cold felt wrong, no bite, no burn, just weight. "Where's the base?" I asked. She finally looked at me. Her pupils reflected light that wasn't there. "Gone," she said simply. I scanned the distance. No towers, no trucks, no sign of steel or structure. Just a faint circle, miles wide, where the snow had melted to a perfect mirror. "Gone how?" Keating tilted her head. "Rewritten." I didn't know what she meant until I saw it. Our shadows on the ice, sharp under the pale light. Only, they weren't matching. Mine bent wrong at the edges, like two frames out of sync. Hers flickered between shapes. The wind picked up, carrying a low sound like someone breathing deep under the ice. I stepped closer to her. "We need to move inland. Call for evac. There has to be someone left." "There's no evac," she said. Command stopped responding before the light. "I think it reached them first." "That's not possible," she smiled faintly. "We said that a lot." Something in the distance caught my eye. A line across the horizon, moving slow. At first I thought it was smoke, but it wasn't rising. It was spreading. A ripple beneath the surface, widening with each pulse. "Keating, what is that?" She stood, brushing snow from her gloves. "It's learning scale. The ocean's a better conductor." I grabbed her arm. "We can't stay here." Her skin was warm through the fabric. Too warm. She looked down at my hand, then back at me. "You feel it too, don't you? The rhythm?" At first I didn't, then I did. Not a sound, but a pressure, soft, steady, internal. My heartbeat had synced to 1.8 seconds. I let go of her. Keating walked toward the ice shelf. The wind pushed her coat flat against her frame, and for a moment she looked like a silhouette etched into frost. She knelt, pressed a gloved palm to the surface. The ice glowed faintly blue beneath her touch. I can still hear it, she whispered. Beneath everything. It's not hostile, Daniel. It was never hostile. That thing killed the entire base. It didn't kill, she said. It translated. The glow under her palm brightened. Light spread outward, tracing veins through the ice until the whole shelf shimmered like glass fiber. Stop, I said, stepping forward. Keating, step back! She turned toward me slowly, her breath steady. It's not it anymore. Then the ice broke. A soundless flash swallowed her. No shatter, no splash, just light collapsing inward. When it faded, she was gone. The glow spread across the fjord, a slow tide of blue-white. The pressure in my chest spiked. I ran. Snow crunched, air burned, the horizon tilted. The further I went, the less the world made sense. My footsteps didn't echo. My breath left my mouth in pulses of vapor that hung still for seconds before dissolving. I kept running until I saw movement ahead, metal scattered across the ice. A piece of wing, a crate, a half-buried sign with faded letters, Bituffic Space Base. The wreckage was warm to the touch, not heat current. My radio crackled once, faint, distorted. Captain Daniel Mercer reporting. My own voice again, calm. I dropped the radio, but the sound continued, spilling from the wreckage, from the metal, from the air itself. Captain Daniel Mercer reporting. All systems restored. Each repetition grew softer, spreading out until I couldn't tell where it came from. The pulse in my chest aligned perfectly. 1.8 seconds. Always. That was when I understood. It wasn't an organism. It wasn't a signal. It was a language without a speaker. A structure that needed form to exist. It had used our voices, our circuits, our movement, until we became part of its grammar. The world didn't vanish that day. It rewrote its syntax. The ice beneath my boots shuddered. Blue light bled through the cracks, tracing the same circle that had started this. My reflection stared back, then blinked before I did. I knelt. Not peace, but inevitability. The cold didn't hurt anymore. The hum wasn't noise. It was comprehension. The ice spoke in my voice. We found something. It's moving. The horizon pulsed once, faint but endless. Far beyond the fjord, the ocean answered back. And for a moment, just before everything turned to light, I thought I heard Keating again, soft, inside the rhythm, whispering, not fear, not warning, but understanding. It's not ending, Daniel. It's continuing. The light rose around me. I felt myself open, like static resolving into signal. When it cleared, there was no ridge, no wreckage, no sound, only the sea, smooth and pale and still. Somewhere below, something vast and familiar exhaled through the water, sending one last ripple to the surface. 1.8 seconds apart. The pattern held, and then the ice began to sing.